15th of December 2021.
Fully vaccinated Australians cleared for takeoff
as our international border reopened.
From news.com.au. News.com.au.
I'm Andrew Bucklow, and I've got news for you. Well, I don't know about you, but I am desperate for an overseas holiday. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Australia, but I am just so bloody keen to jump on a plane and have a bintang in Bali or a flirtini in Fiji or, I don't know, pop a champagne cork in New York. Okay, that one didn't really work at all. But here's the thing, the lingering presence of COVID and this Omicron variant have got me a little bit spooked, and booking an overseas holiday does feel a little bit risky. So today I'm going to chat to a travel expert to find out just how risky it actually is. She's also going to reveal some essential travel tips for anyone considering heading overseas in the next few months. And I'm also going to be joined by a flight attendant who's set to reveal all the juicy secrets from her job, including how often people join the Mile High Club, hello, how to get an upgrade, yes please, and what happens if someone dies mid-flight. Alrighty, joining me now is news.com.au's travel editor Vanessa Brown. Ness, I can't help but notice you're not in the office, just living it up in some fancy hotel, are we?
Look, not quite a hotel. I'm out here by the Hawkesbury River where it is full-on sunshine, a beautiful welcome from all the rain that we've had.
Okay, well, I didn't ask for a weather report. Okay, let's start with the basic question. I'm an Aussie. I want to go overseas for an international holiday. Am I allowed to right now?
You want to swap that fake tan for a real tan, I'm thinking.
Busted, yes.
Look, the short answer is yes, but it does look a little different from 2019. Obviously, new vaccination requirements are in place, PCR tests, and also international passports. So it's a little different, but yes, long story short, you can.
Now, I'm gagging to go overseas, but am I alone? Do we have any stats on how many Aussies actually want to go overseas in the next 12 months?
Yeah, look, prior to the Omicron variant creeping up on us all, people were really starting to show interest from November 1 when the government opened our international borders to travel overseas, book overseas. You know, they were looking at Fiji, they were looking at the US. Omicron, I think, has sort of thrown a little bit of a cat amongst the pigeons. People are feeling a little bit like, oh, what does this mean for me? But we are seeing that interest is still high. We actually did a little bit of research recently. 10,000 of our news.com.au readers responded, with 50% sort of saying that, yes, Omicron hasn't impacted my intention to travel overseas in the next 12 months. Whereas the other 50% sat back and said, oh, look, I'm just going to see how this plays out. I think I'll let a few more people travel overseas first, and then I'll look at booking a ticket maybe towards the end of next year.
Well, let's talk about the risk factor. I mean, is it risky to start booking overseas trips at the moment?
Look, I think anything in a pandemic, there is a degree of risk. And I think we need to remember that we are still very much in the middle of this pandemic. I mean, just look over at Europe and the UK. They're heading into winter and they're seeing a real spike in cases, masks coming back, third booster jabs coming into place. So yes, there is a degree of risk. If you were to get COVID while on a trip to the UK, you will not be able to step aboard on that plane to return to Australia. But I guess that's just something that people need to weigh up, and that's why things like insurance is so crucial now more than ever when it comes to overseas travel.
Just before you start on insurance, why don't we go through a bit of a checklist? What are some things that we can do as Aussie travellers who want to head overseas for a holiday to kind of cut down on that risk? What are the essentials?
Yeah, so insurance is really crucial, and it is a little bit of a grey area in terms of what people are covering, and a lot of insurance providers aren't actually back on the international game yet, but there are some providers that will look after you if you go to a destination and say you get COVID and you're not allowed to board your plane, so you're needing to, sort yourself out with some accommodation or some medical help and things like that. However, there is a little bit of a catch. If there's already a do not travel advice out from Smart Traveller, or there's already a border closure in place in the destination that you're going to, then that insurance will be waived. So it's a little bit complicated. It's really good to jump on the phone and make sure that you're fully aware of what you're covered and what you're not covered for before you jump on a plane.
Okay, perfect. Travel insurance. What else do we have to do before booking a trip overseas?
Yeah, so look, the next thing is you need the international travel passport, vaccine passport, I should say, which essentially shows that you've been vaccinated with a recognised vaccine like Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Moderna. The other thing you'll need is a PCR test, and this is where it gets a little tricky because each country has a little bit of a different requirement in terms of that PCR test.
Okay.
So some of them require 24 hours before you fly, others 3 days or 72 hours. Some are a little bit more extensive. I believe if you go to China, it's really quite extensive, the kind of testing that you need, and will cost sort of around that 150 mark. Whereas other places like Fiji, sort of it's under that $100 mark. But still, it adds up because you'll need a few.
Yeah, so you kind of have to get a PCR test before you go for most international flights, but they're not the ones that you get when you go and line up at like the pharmacy or the local testing venue, are they?
That's right. Unfortunately, those freebies that you might get in Bondi or sort of at local stop that we've been using for over the past 18 months, they don't qualify. So you will need to pay for these ones. They're a specific one dependent on your country. So it's crucial that before you fly or head to the airport, that you ensure that you've got the correct one for where you're going. Now there is a little saving grace at the airport, or Sydney International Airport specifically. They do have a testing clinic on site, and they do guarantee that test result will be back to you within 4 hours. And I've visited this one already, not as part of an overseas trip, but just to sort of trial the experience. And I had my testing result back within 2 hours, and I think it was sort of about $79. So, relatively good price point in the scheme of things. But I think that is something people need to factor in, is that testing, it will sort of add up, especially if you are travelling as a family of 4. So, you just need to factor that in before you book.
Oh, just leave the kids at home, I say. It'll be so much cheaper. You'll have a better holiday. Okay.
Especially after this past year with all the homeschooling and everything.
All right, so you've mentioned that we've got to get our COVID-19 vaccination certificate. We can get that through the Medicare app. We're going to have to get PCR tests and factor in those costs. We should potentially get travel insurance. Anything else? It's all quite overwhelming. Perhaps it should be an idea to use a travel agent?
Absolutely. And I think that the next 12 months, even longer, the travel agent is going to be so crucial in getting that overseas trip right. I think the past 18 months, we've been inconvenienced more than ever before. We've been hit with surprises, border closures, just the whole world has been turned upside down, really. Having that experience behind us going into your next overseas trip, I think will be crucial. And so I think I'll definitely be using them for my future trips. Absolutely.
What about airlines? Because obviously we'll be booking our flights through them, and I'm a little bit nervous because, in the past, perhaps they haven't been so kind. When your flight gets cancelled or you have to cancel the trip, you end up losing a fair bit of money. What are their kind of cancellation or moving date of flights policies at the moment?
Yeah, look, I think Australian Airlines have some really good policies in place. I know I had a little bit of a scan this morning, and Qantas and Jetstar, I think, have relatively easy cancellation policies in place through till February next year. Virgin Australia, I think, is a little bit longer through till April. But there is a little bit of a grey area when it comes to booking through a third party like Expedia or Webjet. You'll actually need to go through that third party to try and get that change in place or that money back.
Oh, that's annoying too, isn't it?
It is frustrating, and it's emails bounce around and you go to different people. So in this current climate, it's probably best to just kind of go straight to the airline when it comes to booking that ticket, because you're working with them directly and not through that sort of third party, hoping to sort of get that consideration in place.
Have you got a deal in place with the airlines? Are you hoping for a kickback as a result of that comment?
I was about to say, if you could forward this interview to the airlines a little later, that would be great.
You know who's even more excited about the return of international travel than Vanessa Brown? It is flight attendants and pilots. They are finally back to work. Brianna Young is a flight attendant and a YouTuber who shares tips and travel secrets online. She joins me now. Bri, how has your job as a flight attendant changed since this bloody COVID thing started?
Well, first of all, I'm back flying again, which is great.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, so obviously when COVID happened, the airline industry kind of stopped running. So, yeah, back flying, which is amazing. And there's been a few things that have changed as well. So, of course, we have to wear masks, of course, on the planes and things like that. And there's a lot more cleaning procedures involved within my job and within the airline as well that we need to do. So that's definitely something else that has changed. And probably the most, I guess, the hardest thing to keep up with is all the border changes and things like that. So really staying on top of what's happening in the world and what borders have restrictions and things like that.
How did you survive when those flights just stopped during the pandemic? Like, were you just sitting at home?
Yeah, basically. Turned up to work. There was, all the flight boards were completely red with cancelled. And yeah, from that day, I guess, been sitting home. Luckily, there was JobKeeper that kind of kept me going. So grateful for the government for that little initiative. And then after a couple of months, got a bit bored at home, watched all the Netflix I could, and ended up getting another job with the government, actually. So I was there for a couple of months until they called me back into work.
So now you are back in the air, thank goodness. How often do you have to get tested?
So luckily, I don't have to get tested at all, unless I'm in an exposure site or there is someone on the aircraft that does have COVID or anything like that. So yeah, just really lucky. I guess it's just if I get exposed to that.
And when you fly into different states and occasionally have to stay in hotels overnight, are you allowed out in the public kind of to go around, walk around, go to restaurants if you want, or are you kind of confined to your hotel?
Yeah, good question. So basically, I'm from Melbourne. So we've had a lot of restrictions, a lot of lockdowns and things like that. And so there are a lot of restrictions as into what states we can go into. If the state's borders are shut to my state, then I have to quarantine in a hotel for that layover. So if I was, to go to WA or something like that, then I would need a quarantine. Unless they open those restricted borders, then I can go out and things like that. So, yeah, it's been a bit interesting navigating that. And I've enjoyed a lot of, hotel rooms by myself and ordering room service and things like that. So,
And how have customers changed since the pandemic hit? Have we become more understanding, or is everyone a bit more tense, a bit more aggro?
So to be honest, I found people to be really lovely, actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I found that people, they're just excited to be out and traveling. They're just, excited to see their loved ones. They're excited to be on a plane, to go to that holiday that they've been wanting to go for the last couple of years. So yeah, that's just what I found. Just really lovely people, just really excited to be up in the air.
And is it compulsory for customers to wear masks when they're on a flight now?
Yeah, that is correct. It is a requirement by the government that we do have to wear masks. And I definitely understand how uncomfortable and claustrophobic that sometimes can make passengers. Like I'm in a mask all day from, to 10, 11, 12 hours at a time. So I definitely understand how uncomfortable that might be. But, it's just a requirement and something we all have to go through at the moment, unfortunately.
Have you had to deal with any kind of anti-mask customers who just get a little bit frustrated or perhaps don't want to wear it or aren't wearing it properly?
Yeah, there are the occasional people that, aren't wearing it properly and things like that. But, you just kind of explain the situation and share with them how, we're all in this boat together. And I haven't had any, significant individuals that have had issues. So it's been all good from my end, which is good.
I went on a flight not too long ago and I saw that a lot of people are obviously taking masks very seriously, but going a step further, some are wearing plastic gloves, bringing their own kind of disinfectant. Is that common?
Yes, definitely. I've seen a lot of people wipe down, their trays and seats and everything like that. Yeah, sometimes I've seen some, hazard suits come on during the midst of COVID, but not so much now. But back then it was, very, very intense.
Okay, Bree, I'm sure you get this question all the time. Is it common for people to try and join the Mile High Club during a flight?
No.
Really?
Yeah. I mostly do the short-haul international and domestic flights. So I think perhaps that might be more common on the long-haul flights when people have a bit more time and, they get a bit bored or something.
What you're saying is the shorter the route, the less chance of catching someone having a route.
Yeah, exactly.
And what if you do catch someone? Do you guys get trained on what to do? Like, do you have to knock on the door and ask them to leave, or you just kind of give them a minute or two, don't want to judge them, to finish up?
Yeah, there's no real training involved, I guess, just personal skills and, letting them, I guess, do what they need to. And to be honest, I would never recommend anyone doing that on an aircraft, but, each to their own.
How come? Any reason in particular?
Oh, I don't know. You might catch something. It's a public toilet.
What happens if someone dies during a flight? Is there a special area they're taken to, or do you just kind of put a blanket over them and leave them in their seat?
Yeah, good question. So, of course we want to be as respectful as possible in those situations if that does unfortunately happen. So, they are put in their seat, especially for landing, just to make sure that they are secured and, in the aircraft. But what's interesting about that is that when the aircraft does land, it is considered a crime scene. So the police come on and assess the whole aircraft and the passengers. If that ever happens on your flight, be expecting to, stay there for a little while after you land.
Yeah, that's not ideal. What's the most disgusting thing you've seen a customer do during a flight?
Oh, you see everything as a flight attendant, let me tell you. Just mostly bodily functions, like people handing me fist bags and people clipping their toenails on board and all that kind of stuff. So, you get it all, really.
That is rank. What about the most bizarre request that you've had from a customer?
This isn't probably as bizarre, but it's probably the most common requests that we get, and that is to heat up baby bottles on the aircraft. And fun fact is that we actually don't have microwaves on the aircraft. So,
is that right?
Yeah, so for us to heat it up, we actually have to put it in a bucket of hot water and heat it up. So just a fun fact for any travelling mothers and fathers out there.
And is it possible to get an upgrade? Because it's what everyone wants when they go on a flight. They're hoping to get bumped up from economy to business. But can it happen?
Oh, yeah, that's the dream, hey?
Yeah, totally.
So I think it's mostly common on the international flights. And the reason why that might be is because if the front of the plane isn't as sold out, people need to be moved to the front for weight and balance issues.
Okay.
So if you're going for an international flight and you want an upgrade, I would definitely recommend dressing the part. So, wear your nice clothes and be really nice to the person that's checking you in, because they might have, might need to move people and be looking at who they might want to move. And if you're nice to them, then they might want to do you a favour. So there's my tips on, if you want an upgrade.
If you want to hear more from Bri, you can follow her on YouTube and Instagram. Her handle is Brianna.young. Brianna spelled Brieana. Thanks for listening to today's episode of I've Got News for You. I'm off to try and book an overseas flight. I'll chat to you again tomorrow. Unless I get a really cheap last minute deal, in which case I might just chuck a sickie and go overseas. Okay, bye.